Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? So I was taking a look at currencies from all around the world, how they performed against the U.S. dollar. I think you'd be surprised at how some currencies unexpectedly did very well against the U.S. dollar. As I take a look at the list, you can see that a big portion of the currencies around the world have actually had lost value. There was a depreciation in the currency. As I stated before, I felt like the U.S. dollar was being used as a weapon to really just kill currencies everywhere. But now we're talking about going into lockdowns again. This is not a good situation. But I'm curious to see how people are going to react to these lockdowns. Already we're seeing 7 provinces over there in China of people protesting against the lockdowns. They're done with this crap. The interesting thing about China is they don't tell anybody the truth about their numbers. The one number that did come out, and if they're telling you this is the number, you have to really wonder what the real number is. 260 million COVID positive patients within 6 days. There's a lot of conspiracies about what's going on out there, although I don't think they're conspiracies at all. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, head on over to our friends at Money Metals Exchange. The link will be down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code PIMPYSILVER. Yes, it has changed. PIMPYSILVER. So if you're watching this video and it's an older video, make sure you check on current videos, because the code is going to be changing from time to time from now on. Also, I can be found on other platforms. Everybody knows I have my own website, Pimpy's News Network. Over here, I post videos that I can't get away with over on YouTube. Also, I have a group on Facebook called Pimpy's Investment Chat. Over here, we do talk about gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, as well as foreign currency investments. Come on over here and join us. It's free to do so. You can also come follow me on Twitter, MeWe, YouTube, and Odyssey. The links for all these platforms will be down below in the description. So for whatever reason, if I get removed off of one platform, you could find me on the others. All right, it's saying that cracks are showing in Vietnam's economic miracle. We know what happened in 2020 when we first had the lockdowns. Vietnam did exceptionally well. I think they were the second best. They had the second best GDP in the world. They would have had a phenomenal year had it not been for other countries closing down. They were doing phenomenal. In 2021, they started to kick butt again, and then finally they were hit with the RONA. Somehow in 2020, they managed to avoid dealing with the RONA for the biggest part of the year. Very little people got sick. In 2021, though, people started getting sick. At the end of 2021, they started to rebound. In 2022, at the beginning of the year, they really took off. And 2022 was a good rebound. You can see right here, it also says Vietnam has benefited hugely from China's decoupling trend, but a slowdown in exports threatens to reverse many recent gains. So they were doing pretty good for a little while, and somewhere towards the end of the year, they started to really depreciate against the U.S. dollar. They were losing a ton of money, and they ended up going through a lot of their foreign currency assets, their foreign currency reserves, just to protect their currency. It said after 2 years curtailed by the RONA and marked by the GDP growth between 2% and 3%, Vietnam's economy made a strong comeback in 2022. Projections forecasted the real GDP as 7.5% for 2022, slowing down from 8.8% GDP growth seen in the first 9 months of the year. And I remember us talking about that. I was like, man, they were going to town like gangbusters in the first 9 months and doing phenomenal. And then slow down big time. Exports from January through November 2022 grew more than imports, with the growth of 13% for exports and 10% for imports. So there was a modest trade surplus. Tourism had rebounded from 2021 lows, supporting strong growth in the service sector. Manufacturing and industry grew nearly 9% through the end of November, a slower rate than earlier in the year. there was a slowdown in export orders and hundreds of thousands of factory workers may be facing layoffs according to the unofficial reports. That's going to happen here in the United States. We're already seeing a huge amount of companies getting ready to do layoffs. They want to talk about how great the economy was? No, it wasn't. It was artificially pumped up. Now you're going to watch the layoffs galore. Not to mention, you're going to have to deal with the RONA. And that's what the Biden administration's excuse is going to be. The lockdowns again. No, they faked this economy. It's going to tank. This was planned all along. It said this is a serious concern, especially if the trend intensifies in 2023. Vietnam firms provided limited unemployment compensation, especially for workers with only a few years of service. So then they had corporate bonds were in big trouble, and they have to look into refinancing them in 2022 and 2023. Most of these were sold through private placements and then sold to local investors with tight credit, caused in part by the use of Vietnam's foreign exchange reserves to support its currency. It is difficult for companies to refinance. Yeah, there's a crackdown on loans altogether. People are talking about getting house loans. I would not buy a house right now. This is like the worst time ever. The interest rate's going up and it's causing people to panic thinking they need to buy now while they can lock in the lower interest rates without realizing housing is in a bubble. It's going to crash. So you could be upside down in your mortgage really quick if you're not careful. Said Vietnam's anti-corruption drive has begun looking into some land transfers by real estate companies, throwing doubt in their ability to receive full legal ownership and control of land needed for their projects. Said there are some strains to offset these challenges. Inflation is reported in the low single digits, though many complain that inflation is really high. We see that here. We get told we have like just over 8%. That's not the real inflation numbers. I showed everybody there is this website called Real Dark Stats or something like that. They keep the true numbers of inflation, and they have it well over 16%. The currency has depreciated by only 5% against the U.S. dollar as of early December 2022, less than many other countries, but they still had a depreciation. This prompted other countries to take matters into their own hand. I stated this before, but the United States has the ability to interfere in other people's markets, including messing around with their exchange rates. Egypt did something about it, and I think it really helped their currency out big time. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Foreign direct investment into manufacturing sector will also support growth and add to the structural transformation of the economy. Well, we know prior to the RONA, Trump and China had a trade war going on, and companies were leaving China and going into Vietnam. So they have yet to be able to really benefit from that. It says, meanwhile, participation in trade agreements is giving Vietnam across access to world markets, though Vietnam's government is hoping that China and the U.S. trade tensions do not prevent them from taking full advantage of their position as a supply base acceptable to the United States while relying on imports of intermediate inputs from China. So although 2022 was a good year for Vietnam, the end of 2022 was not so good. All in all, they did good, but the last quarter of the year, whether that's a sign of things to come, who knows? Let's see how other currencies around the world did against the U.S. dollar for 2022. Here's a whole list of different countries, and this is the change in their currency. You can see Afghanistan lost 14% of their value. So I started to go through there, and look at this. Argentina had a 69% growth, their currency versus the U.S. dollar. 69% appreciation against the U.S. dollar. That's really, really good. Bangladesh had a 21% increase. Brazil lost 7%. Myanmar had a 17.98% increase. We know about the coup that went on over there. Colombia had a 20.65% increase in value. So here you go. Look at Egypt. Remember I did that video about the Iraqi dinar, explaining how Egypt was pissed about what was going on and felt like there was some type of coup attempt using the markets, using currency exchange rates to really damage governments. And then they took things in their own hand and decided to handle their own exchange rate. Well, looky there. They had a 56.91% increase in value against the U.S. dollar. Georgia had a 13.59% loss. Look at this one here, Ghana. Woo! Man, their currency value almost doubled in 2022 against the US dollar. A 93.23% increase in value. You can see debt-ridden Ghana, Cedar posts world's biggest gains against the US dollar. So yes, indeed, they did gain. And it goes on to explain why just a little bit. It says Ghana currency took the title of the world's best performer against the US dollar this week amid optimism the debt-distressed country is moving closer to unlocking an International Monetary Fund bailout. No, man. You notice how all these countries are suffering from debt? This is debt caused by other countries, especially countries like ours. In China, they take advantage of these little countries. They beat them down, sack them with so much debt that they can't pay it, that they're forced to go over to the IMF to help bail them out. Again, you guys, they're all part of this same plan, the same agenda. It's all part of that New World Order movement to get countries all desperate and in the same situation where if the citizens want to be bailed out, you know the rule. You're going to have to give up all your private property. This isn't just tinfoil hat wearing stuff. We read about it. I did videos reading about it from the World Economic Forum as well as the IMF. They don't want people owning personal property anywhere. Remember that saying from the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. They weren't lying about it. Haiti had a 44.43% increase in value. I know some of you are wondering, so look at right here. Iraq. Flatline. They didn't gain, they didn't lose any value because they're fixed rate. That's why right now. So there's no gain and there's no loss. We know that on the exchange we're seeing some differences, but the swings weren't big enough for them to have a major loss over here for the year. Laos had a 56.79% increase in value, which is surprising because a lot of Asian countries actually got crippled by the US dollar. Lebanon had a 57.29% increase in value. Malawi had a 25.80% increase in value. Morocco had a 13% increase in value. Pakistan had a 26.89% increase in value. Russia had a 10% loss. That happened right when the sanctions first were imposed. Sierra Leone had a 66.14% increase in value. So a lot of these poor, debt-ridden countries are really doing really good in 2022 against the US dollar. And I knew this was going to happen. Look at Sri Lanka, 81.25% increase in value. That's second, I think, to Ghana. And I'm anticipating this currency continuing to climb in 2023. Sudan had 29.31%. Suriname had a 49.46%. Syria had a 19.25% loss. But you can see the Vietnam Dong had an actual 3.68% increase in value. That actually would have been higher except for the last quarter of the year. They had major depreciation against the US dollar. Vietnam overall in 2022 had a good year. As far as currencies around the world appreciating against the US dollar, if you were lucky enough to jump on something like Ghana, then you made out like a bandit. But, you know, it's really hard to predict these types of things. A lot of those countries are debt sacked. They have a ton of debt. And now they're talking about being bailed out by the IMF. How their currency is going to appreciate that much, I have no idea. Because that means they still have the debt. A lot of times IMF will say, oh, look, we'll do some type of agreement where we'll make sure the countries that you owe money to will forgive 30-40% of the debt, stuff like that. The same thing they did to Iraq. So what you're looking for is consistency and economic growth on any currency that you're dealing with. And if it's true we're going back into lockdowns, we're not going to see that for a while. Sorry to say it, but how our country is going to gain on the United States when it comes to the currency value if everybody's in lockdown all over again. Just remember what happened in 2020 and then ask yourself, oh, what was positive in 2020 that was an asset that gained like gold and silver? And how did currencies do in 2020? The depreciation of the Iraqi dinar. But they're in great position to protect their own currency with all the foreign currency assets that they have, as well as their increase in gold reserves. So I just don't picture anything happening right away when it comes to the Vietnam Dong or the Iraqi dinar. Not right away. Again, these lockdowns are going to really tell us a whole lot whether or not they happen. Okay? That's it for now. Look forward to your comments, and I will get back at you later. I'm out.